and welcome to Young Voices Big Questions with Media Cups. My name is Alex, and today we're going to be talking to someone really amazing. Dame Averil Mansfield was the first female professor of surgery in the UK. That means she helped lots of people and made history too. We can't wait to ask her some big questions about how she did it and what advice she has for young people like us. Let's get started. What are you most proud of?
I suppose I'm most proud of the fact that I set up something to enable young women who wanted to be surgeons to meet other people who wanted to be, other women who wanted to be surgeons. Because when I was young, there weren't any women around. So it was wonderful to have a meeting place where they could meet up and chat with other women who wanted to be surgeons.
When you were younger, did you like doing experiments? Have you got a favourite?
I loved doing experiments, and I used to make the most dreadful smells in my house. And my mother was pretty strict. She made me do my experiments with the back door open so that the smells would go out. I don't think she was too frightened of my experiments, but perhaps she should have been, because you can have nasty explosions with experiments at home. But I loved doing them, and I could go out and buy all the materials from the local shops, which you couldn't do today.
What was the best and worst bit about your job?
The best bit about my job was being able to assist people to get better. Seeing people right at the beginning when they came to see me in my outpatient clinic, and then guiding them through having tests and then operating on them and watching them get better. That was the best thing. The worst thing, of course, was the opposite of that. That was when you simply couldn't help people, and there were diseases that you didn't know how to cure, or operations that didn't work. And that's a terrible thing, because you then have to feel terribly sad that you were unable to help them, and also have to go and speak to their family and explain why you couldn't get them better.
You have to have a steady hand to be a surgeon. Are you good at the game operation?
Am I good at?
The game operation.
The game operation with wire, when you go along the wire. Fairly, but not perfect. So yes, if you have a steady hand, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Now it's over to Clara.
Thank you for your questions. That was lovely.
Hello.
Hello.
Does it feel like you've made a big difference in the field of doctoring and surgery?
I think so. I mean, I suppose that's being a bit big-headed, isn't it, really, to think you've made a big difference. But I think the fact that people are no longer perhaps surprised if the surgeon is female, that's quite a change from when I was a girl. And they would be totally shocked to find a female surgeon. I don't think they are today.
Is it hard to get into the scrubs? Like, are you sitting there for 5 hours trying to get into scrubs?
Is it difficult to get into scrubs?
Yeah.
You mean the clothes that you're wearing?
Yeah.
No, it's just a pair of pants and a shirt top. It's quite simple, really. Do you know why we wear scrubs?
Yeah. To keep yourself keep yourself clean.
It's because yes, it is to keep yourself clean and your patient. More importantly, your patient. So we use them to scrub up. That's where the word comes from. To wash our hands. We wash our hands for quite a long time to make sure they're clean.
What's the longest and hardest operation you've ever done?
Well, I have done an operation that went on all night long. How about that? Started in the daytime and went all the way through till the next day. That's a very, very long time to keep going. You get little breaks, of course. You can stop for a little bit in the middle of a very, very long operation. You can go and have a cup of tea or something in the middle of it, provided there's a natural pause in the operation. But sometimes they can be very long.
What changes do you think you'll make in the world of surgery?
I think some of the changes that we've made have been to see that you don't need to make quite such big incisions in patients that we used to do. A lot of things can be done by a sort of keyhole route, can't they? Which is quite a big change for patients. It's a lovely thing for patients not to have a huge, great slash down their abdomen or their chest.
Thank you. Now we'll go on to Fran.
Okay, thank you very much for your questions, Clara. That was lovely. Hello, Fran.
Hello.
Hello.
Were you nervous the first time you led a surgery?
Well, it's interesting that you should ask me that. I think the first time I did a proper operation, I was quite nervous. But you start off with something terribly small, a little tiny wart or a lump or a bump somewhere. You don't do a big operation right from the very beginning, of course. You have to start small. But the first time I had to take out an appendix, I remember feeling really quite nervous about that, because it felt like I was going into somebody's abdomen, and I was for the first time. So that made you quite scary, really.
Did you find out that people didn't like a lady leading a surgery?
Well, they were all surprised in the beginning to find a lady doing surgery, but they soon, once they knew that you could do the job properly, nobody then minded at all. I never met anybody who said no, they wouldn't have a woman surgeon. It was just that they were a bit surprised, a bit like I sometimes am surprised when the person who is piloting my aeroplane has a female voice when I get into the aeroplane. It's just something new. It's not so new now.
Pass over to Eddie.
Hello, where is Eddie? There's Eddie. Hello, Eddie.
Hello. If you were a surgeon, what job would you think you would have done if you were not a surgeon?
Well, I would still be a doctor, that's for sure. And one of the things that I think has changed while I've been a doctor is how much the radiologists now do that is almost like an operation. Do you know what I mean by a radiologist?
Yeah.
The people who take images, either X-rays or magnetic resonance or CT or whatever it is. But they do a lot of things that we used to have to operate on patients for. So I suspect I might think about that quite hard now if I was to start again.
What was the easiest operation and the hardest operation you've done?
Well, the easy things are when, the first thing to say is that nothing is easy as far as the patient is concerned. Everything is important to the patient. We always have to remember that. Something that feels quite small to us may feel quite big to the patient. So we have always to remember that. But to do some small lump or remove some little lump is not too difficult. But probably the most difficult operation I did was when I was doing something for the first time that had not been done before, or certainly not been done by me before. And then you do feel a little bit out of your depth, perhaps, and you have to make sure that you can do it well, because the important thing is that the patient is safe at the end of the day and that they recover. So sometimes doing things for the first time can feel makes you quite nervous.
What is one fun fact about you that most people might not know?
Oh, a fun fact. Oh, really? Well, there's one fun fact that emerged this very morning when I was talking to somebody, and that is that I went on the back of a Lambretta. You know what a Lambretta is? A scooter, a sort of motor scooter. All the way from London to Salzburg when I was a youngster. So that shocked somebody that I actually climbed on the back of a Lambretta and went all the way down to the south of France on it. So that's my fun fact.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What a good question.
Just before we head over to Olivia, I do have a couple of questions that have come in from people who couldn't join tonight. So I think it'd be unfair that we ask those ones too. So we've got a couple from Cecilia who asks, were there times people told you that you couldn't be a surgeon because you were a girl?
There were times when people certainly suggested that it was going to be extremely hard and possibly that I couldn't do it. That in a way made me all the more determined, because I couldn't see any reason why, just because I happened to be a girl, I couldn't follow my dreams and become a surgeon. So that was tricky, but you know, you overcome these things.
Yeah. And one more from Cecilia. What advice would you give to children who want to do something that people say is too hard for them to do?
Well, the most important thing is to try and make some steps in the right direction first, so that you can show, in my case, my mother, who didn't believe it was possible for me to go to medical school. So I had to show her that I could actually pass the exams. I could actually work hard enough to do this. And once she understood that I was making progress, then she was supportive. And I think you'll find that people generally, if you take the right steps, you're prepared to put in the hard work, take those first steps, then they'll begin to realize that you are serious about it and there's no stopping you. So that's the important step.
Fantastic. I'll hand you over to Olivia now.
Thank you.
Why is an operating theatre called an operating theatre?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, I think it's because in the old days, the operating table with the patient on it was down at the bottom, and there would be tiered seats for people to actually watch what was going on. I've got some photographs of operating theatres with tiers of hundreds of people watching some poor unfortunate person having an operation on the operating table. Now, it's not called an operating theatre in other parts of the world. It's sometimes called an operating room. But theatre sort of suggests that it's rather dramatic, doesn't it? And it's not necessarily dramatic. I think it should be quite a nice, calm, peaceful place to work. It's a good question, though.
Thank you. What did people say when you told them you wanted to be a surgeon?
Well, my mother was the one who was most opposed to the idea of me saying I wanted to be a surgeon. She said I could say I wanted to be a nurse, but not that I would say I wanted to be a doctor or even more a surgeon. I have nothing against nurses, and I would have been very proud to become a nurse, but I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a surgeon. So I had to overcome some of those resistances that people thought that's not possible.
What challenges did you face?
I think the challenges really are making sure that you do a really good job. I think that's true in all professions. What you want to do is to be the best you possibly can be at the thing that you've set out to become. So I wanted to demonstrate that I could do the job really well, as well as anybody, and particularly as well as any man could do the job. There was really no reason why, as a woman, I shouldn't do just as good a job as a man. So that was a challenge, and that was something I had to meet up with.
What advice would you give to budding surgeons?
Budding surgeons, I've often given advice to them. The first thing is hard work, because it is hard work. You do have to work very hard to become a surgeon. The second thing is humility. Do you know what I mean by humility? You understand the word? In other words, you don't think you're better than you are, bigger than you are, more important than you are, but are humble about the approach that you make. And the third advice I give to people is to have a sense of humour. So it's 3 H's: hard work, humility and humour. And having a sense of humour will get you through all manner of difficulties. So keep seeing the funny side of things and you'll get through all sorts of problems.
So we have got a couple of questions coming actually from Eddie's mum. He's obviously been listening in the background, Eddie. Do you want to ask them on her behalf?
Which operations are possible now that were not when she started?
Oh, that's a good one. Quite a lot of things are possible now that were not so. It's mostly a question of the anaesthetic that goes with it that's changed, I think, beyond belief. We haven't mentioned anaesthetists this evening, have we? But keeping the person alive while we do more and more difficult operations. I remember when open heart surgery, when you're operating on the beating heart, was tantamount to a death sentence. It wasn't safe to do it. And it's now very safe to do it, very safe indeed. A well-established thing. So things like that have changed, and it's largely because the care that is given to the patient by mostly the anaesthetist has improved beyond measure.
And the second question is, how do you feel about artificial intelligence being used in medicine?
Well, I'm not an expert on artificial intelligence, are you? Is your mother?
Yeah, she is.
Education.
Well, I'm sure it's got a good place, and I'm sure it will help us, particularly with learning. I think learning and testing ourselves using artificial intelligence is going to be helpful, and I'm sure it's going to help with diagnosis. I don't think we need to be afraid of it. I think we need to control it, and I think it will be useful to us.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Do you think that working in the NHS now is harder than when you started?
Working in the NHS, did you say?
Yes.
I think there are some difficulties with the NHS at the moment. We can all see them, can't we? I don't think it's at all a good thing that if you go to the hospital, to the A&E department, you might have to wait a long time to be seen or looked after. That is a bad thing. So that side of things, I think, is much more difficult today. The other thing that's changed is that we used to work in teams when I was young, and I think working in a team is really tremendous experience. Do you agree with that? Do you work in a team? Yeah, I think so.
Wonderful. Thank you. Avril, before I hand you over to Olivia for our outro, I wondered whether you had any questions for our young reporters.
Well, I'd love to know if any of them have got any interest in becoming a surgeon. How about that for an idea? Any hands up that might possibly think about it?
Anybody thinking about being a doctor or a surgeon?
Fran says definitely not. Clara says maybe. What about Alex and Olivia? I can't see what you're saying. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Not sure. Well, I'm going to persuade those of you who are unsure that it is becoming a doctor is the most wonderful career. I've loved every moment of it. Okay, it's hard work, but it really is rewarding. So think about that. Don't dismiss it as out of the question.
Eddie, what is it you'd like to do when you're older? Because I know I can tell. I know Fran, Clara, Alex, and Olivia are all budding actors, so they would like to be actors when they're older, I think.
Great.
What about you, Eddie?
I would probably want to be a football player.
Oh, okay.
That's a great hobby. Is it a good profession? There's another question. I remember my piano teacher when I was at school, and I could have become a pianist as a profession. And she said to me, it's a wonderful hobby. It's not a great profession. If you can be a doctor, go and be a doctor. So that's what I did.
And you still play the piano now, don't you, Avril?
I do play the piano every day. Every day. I've just played it, before I came to this. Yes, I love it.
Wonderful. Any final questions from anybody before we hand over to Olivia? We've had so many wonderful questions and fantastic answers, Avril. Thank you so much for that.
They've done so well. I've loved being with them. I really have.
Thank you, that was such an inspiring chat. Thank you, Dame Averil, for answering our big questions and for showing us that we can do anything if we work hard and believe in ourselves. We hope you have enjoyed watching. This has been Olivia for Young Voices Big Questions with Media Clubs. See you next time.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.